All right. Good morning, Doug. Lots of crazy stuff happening in the world and Trump world. And I want to start off with this little clip that from yesterday. Just give me 1 second to bring it up. I'm sure a lot of people, if you're on Twitter, saw this, but just in case you missed it, we'll watch it, Doug, 33 seconds, and then we'll get your comments.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own.
That's it, Doug. That's the short version.
Yeah. Well, when I saw that last night, I was flabbergasted. I was flummoxed. I thought that the Donald actually was on some type of mind-controlling drugs, or else he'd had a psychotic break. I mean, if you listen to what he said and the import of it, it's actually insane because it's totally impossible and it's undesirable. I mean, I can't think of anything ever that's, I think he is chancing, if he tries to pursue that. They're exercising, is it the 25th Amendment, where they can put him away for being, yeah,
Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we can break this down and analyze it, but wait a minute. There's 2 million Gazans that have lived there for all of their lives. Not a nice place to live anymore. I think I sounded like Trump when I said that just now. But these people own that land. So what are you going to do? You're going to evict them and transport them to someplace else against their will, probably, certainly, and send them where? Who wants to accept them? And who's going to pay for all that? I mean, we're talking about gigantic money. And then to do all the things, and then build a resort in a war zone where people were going to hate the Israelis and the U.S. more than ever after you do that. I mean, this is so insane that I don't think it couldn't have even been a figment of Kamala's imagination.
How does this rank with other imperial action of the U.S.?
Well, of course, we've covered Panama before, and I suggest people go on internationalman.com and read the article that I had covering that. And Greenland, I'm sure that Trump is thinking that by making the Louisiana Purchase, when Jefferson did that, was a great idea. It was a great deal. But it's funny. I think that Jefferson actually had some quibbles about that because he knew that it was unconstitutional to do that. So was it a good idea? I mean, this is a long conversation that's worth having. Would the world be better off if the U.S. had not acquired the Louisiana Purchase? Well, on the one hand, you can say, since the U.S. was a truly unique and special place with a constitution and with values that nobody else had, so it was great to impose that on a huge area of land, because those were, in my opinion, good things. But Greenland is what does Donald say about Greenland? He says, well, we need their strategic minerals, but wait a minute. If you want to mine in Greenland now, you can. There's absolutely nothing stopping you from going up there and mining those minerals. So you don't need to make it part of the U.S. in order to capture its minerals. And Uh, are the Chinese and the Russians going to take it over? Well, I don't think that that's a reasonable thing. What are they going to land the Chinese army on its northern shores? And uh, this is all goofy. It's megalomania on Trump's part. In addition to the fact that Greenland right now, the numbers apparently are, it costs about $10,000 per person per year to the Danish. So we'd have to assume that, plus all the other money that we'd be throwing at it. But the U.S. government is bankrupt. So these people are out of control. They're like a gambler on tilt.
But this is so much worse though, because yeah, you're displacing, as you said, 2 million people along the way. I mean, it's Greenland, you could probably convince the 50,000 people there to go for it, to get on board with the idea
Oh
at
yeah,
least.
probably.
But in Gaza, we just said, okay, it's not even unless I'm misunderstanding him, he's saying it's ours now, it's America's now, and we're gonna take
Yeah,
responsibility for it.
yeah, that's what he said. I mean, we're going to pay for it. We're going to own it. I mean, uh, it's like the U.S. has turned from Israel's toy poodle into Israel's frothing at the mouth Rottweiler. I mean, it's solving Israel's problem, is what it is, at the expense of America. It's actually insane. I mean, if you want to throw these terms around, I would say that it's treasonous on the part of Trump to even put forward something like that. It's so stupid and costly and counterproductive in every way.
We'd have to assume if we're going to do that, would we know that Israel had a problem with Iran for a long time. What are the odds at this point? If we're willing to do this, which this seems outrageous, why wouldn't we go along with a plan to attack the nuclear facilities in Iran?
Well, Trump has said that Iran getting nuclear weapons is not on the table. We're going to stop them, okay? So how do you stop them? They're in Central Asia, okay? Can Israel do it? I mean, this is crazy. This is starting a, a major war with a major country. This isn't like invading Grenada, okay? Or invading Panama, both of which we've done recently,
Or even invading Iraq?
or even invading Iraq. That's right.
Well, I think for people who feel like World War III is off the table with Trump, that he's going to solve things in Russia and Ukraine, and he's going to solve things in the Middle East. I think that this opens that up completely to the idea that war is on the table with Iran. Because if we're doing something like this, everything so far he's done, you could argue, was America first. But this is not. This you can't.
Yeah, I'm such a huge supporter of what Doge is trying to do with Elon Musk firing all these government employees and so forth. This is wonderful. But at this point, I wonder if Trump is thinking that he's actually like a Roman Empire emperor, that he can do everything and anything.
Sure seems like it. It's Yeah. I mean, it did seem like it was when I first saw the video. Thought I was like watching an AI fake of some kind because it was so outrageous.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought too. This is really good, but apparently it's quite real.
It's
He's going to have to back off from this, I think.
Yeah, well, we'll see. It's interesting. Well, so speaking of all the stuff that's happening with Doge, there's a lot of revelations that are coming out about this USAID thing, and a lot of them are very interesting. Like it turns out there's so many people on the dole. There are lots of data scientists that are getting into the data and really going through it now and publishing what they find on X. And you find out, like, for instance, that there's dozens of these nonprofits that are funded by USAID that end up funding Bill Kristol's nonprofit, for instance. And this guy clearly comes out against Trump. He's definitely was funded by them, and it's not just him. It turns out But last week, Politico sent out an email to staff because they missed payroll, and some people were saying, "Hey, that's weird. USAID cut off the payments, and all of a sudden, Politico can't make payroll." Well, and to find out now that Politico has been funded, at least in part, by USAID. And I mean, it just shows you how it's not just stuff, crazy things overseas. It's stuff here in the US. This stuff is working its way in. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And I'm sure once they dig into the numbers, they're going to find that there are hundreds of these NGOs that are doing all kinds of disastrous things everywhere in the world, have been using USAID as a piggy bank. It's it's so perverse that it's actually insane. And so I looked into it a little bit, just skimming on the surface, and I didn't realize that USAID had a very large building, and it has 10,000 employees. That's a lot of people wandering around doing stupid and nefarious things. And of course, they're all fighting for all kinds of reasons. I mean, we can't cut off all these poor people that need this or need that. The grift is just unbelievable.
It's so big. I mean, and you see all these congressmen and senators that sit as directors on the boards of various organizations. And I don't know what their compensation is for sitting on these boards of these NGOs, but you could see how the web is so complex and so intertwined that there's payoffs everywhere for everyone. And of course, it's totally legal done this way, but it should be criminal. I mean, it's just disgusting.
It should be. That's one of the reasons sitting on the boards of NGOs getting money that way, where these people legally become quite wealthy. People enter Congress, middle class, and they leave multimillionaires. Even Bernie Sanders, who always has made a big thing out of hating rich people. Well, of course, sitting on boards is one way you become wealthy. Then you get a phony baloney book contract. That's another way. And then you can give speeches at outrageous inflated prices. That's another way to transfer the money. And those are just the legal ways. Oh, well, and selling your artwork. I mean,
Of course.
Hunter tried that successfully. So, no, look, the only way to solve this problem actually is to go back to the US government doing nothing but defending citizens from physical attack, domestically with the police, from abroad with the military, and a court system to adjudicate this. And that's it. Total, absolute, nothing else.
Right.
No involvement in economics whatsoever. So
Because when they have access to money, it gets twisted and abused in ways that the public has no awareness of. I mean,
and I'm not sure there's any way of rolling it back at this point because these people are fighting for their lives in every way possible. And not only that, but frankly, Trump not having a core philosophy, he doesn't want to pull these things out by the roots. Well, maybe a few things, but a few things like the Department of Education, which is a great idea, and USAID, which I guess he's not going to be able to do that anyway because it was designated by Congress. I think the situation, I've gone from being extremely hopeful when I started seeing Trump do the things that he was doing during the last 2 weeks to now thinking, it actually is hopeless.
it is. And, we talked about this last week that he's setting the stage that at some point there's going to be this crisis point, some point where he gets, a judge rules one way that he can't do a certain thing. And he just says, screw you, I'm going to do it anyway, or something. We're being set up for some conflict where a Rubicon seems like it's going to be crossed. It seems inevitable.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because so many of the judges are bent and ultra leftist that when we see Trump overrule the judge and say, I'm not doing it, I'd say, yeah, I'm glad about that. But wait a minute, there's a bigger issue here.
Yeah.
he's acting really like a Roman emperor.
He really is. He absolutely is. And, his supporters love it. Honestly,
Yeah,
love it.
yeah.
They love it. And I don't know if there's a grand design to it or if he's just lost his mind. But I think we're in for some dramatic changes, bigger than what we could have expected. I think even with Kamala. I'm not saying changes won't be better than with Kamala. I was very worried about her, but I think things would just continued on the trend with her. And instead, we're going to get something totally different and totally unexpected.
Yeah. Yeah. For a while, I was thinking, well, we're not going to have a civil war after all. But now but he does all these crazy things. The US government's been out of control for many years, but Trump is hardly throwing oil on the waters. I, yes, I know you had to go in and break things and destroy the superstructure of the US government. Yes, that's all wonderful. But sometimes you can go a little bit too far, because he doesn't have a philosophical core. That's the
Right.
problem. I think he's flying by the seat of his pants with all these things like this stupid. He must have sat down and done some type of a goofy deal with Bibi Netanyahu that he wants to take over Gaza, the worst place in the worst place in the world to take over or do anything. And he wants to do it. All I can
And
say is, what's the matter with him?
well, and there's been a lot of talk in the last couple months about by some people that I think are CIA plants trying to get it out there in the zeitgeist, talking about terror cells that have infiltrated in the U.S. through the open borders for a long period of time, and that there's a plan for a multi-city attack. And when they were framing it as if it were Iran, okay, so this is what has been in the zeitgeist, been talked about on a lot of popular podcasts in the last couple of months. Tell me that if there are people, they're real true believers who believe in jihad, tell me that this will not put them over the edge. Tell me that this wouldn't be total justification in their mind for whatever they might do in the United States.
They're going to go totally wild because the meme has been that Israel has been stealing their land. I mean, from the very foundation of the state of Israel. I mean, the jihadists say this is all about theft. I can see their argument. Not saying I agree or disagree. It's none of my business. It's none of my business, or none of our business, frankly. But doing something this overt and evicting the population, that's just too
Dangerous.
much. They can't let that pass. They can't.
It's dangerous. So one thing you mentioned to me is that about USAID, that before Trump came in, its budget was much smaller than it was when he left. I think the numbers were 22 billion when he came in.
10 billion. 10 billion.
Okay.
I
And
believe. Am I correct?
well, the last fiscal year, which was the full before he took office, it says 22.3 in
Oh, is
26.
that right? Okay.
Yeah. But by the time he left office, it was 41 billion.
So he doubled the size of USAID while he was in office. Well, why did he do it then? Because it was no different than it is now, really. I mean, it's worse now after 4 years of Biden, certainly. But what's going on here? Has he explained that? He loves to spend money, of course.
That's the thing. When you told me that, I was shocked. Actually, I'm really surprised that happened while he was president.
And USAID has a huge building with 10,000 employees. I mean, this is unconscionable. And the Donald doubles its budget while he's in office. What? Well, clearly there's no philosophical principles that work here with the Donald.
That's
I'd
right.
like an explanation from him why he did that. It should be understandable because, more and more, I'm becoming disenchanted with Donald. He can explain it probably simply because his entire vocabulary is mostly composed of the words beautiful, greatest, best, like
You
never, like never before. And you wouldn't believe I mean, he's got like a score of stock phrases combined with 500 really basic words that he says everything with. So I'd like an explanation with that, even using just the stock phrases in 500 words. Tell me what's going on with that.
I don't think we'll ever get an answer to that.
No, no,
And I don't
I
think
don't.
people
I'm not
care.
sure anybody will even ask him that question, right? Quite frankly.
I doubt it. One of the just last thing on USAID is that you learned that all of these celebrities that went over to visit Zelensky apparently were paid huge amounts of money to show up. So, have that constant, turnstile of, Sean Penn and Angelina Jolie and all these people coming in. They were all being paid millions of dollars by USAID to do it. Isn't that shocking?
It's it's shocking and disgusting. It really is. The US government is on tilt. And I'm not sure and it seems to be getting worse, notwithstanding the wonderful things that Doge is trying to do. And
Yeah.
I'm afraid that they're going to be stopped in those things too, with a barrage of lawsuits and all kinds of nefarious actions that these people that are trying to stay in their desks are going to do.
Well, and, they have this gigantic NGO funding network. I mean, how many are we talking? 1 million people whose livelihoods are dependent on the income that comes from it. I mean, there's a lot of people that are going to be whose rice bowls are broken by this. And so you can imagine a lot of action from them to try and fix it.
Right. And the ones who have pissed away all their ill-gotten gains aren't going to be able to make their mortgage or rent payments.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
they'll be out in the streets protesting. Oh, this is going to be fascinating to watch. I'm just happy to be watching it from here in Uruguay as opposed to out my
Yeah.
front window in the US.
100%. It's just, yeah, I mean, everything's so different here. I think I shared with you, I know I shared with you this morning, my wife went to go to a local ag trade show. And I knew the president was going to be there. And people don't believe me about the way the government is structured here, where there isn't a separation of the elites in this way that's, here. Like the president doesn't have a security detail. He drives himself around. He just, and so I knew he was going to be there. And I said, oh, go up and say hi to him and get a selfie so I can prove to people, there's no advanced planning, just, he's going to be at the event. When you see him, go up to him. So she sent me this morning. She's got a couple of pictures with the president. I mean, it's that people are so accessible. It's so normal. It's weird.
Yeah, it was absolutely wonderful. Just anybody that shows up at a trade show can walk up to him. Now, of course, Jane is good looking and charming. I'm sure that helped, but anybody could have done it. It was pretty obvious.
Yeah, it's awesome. So it's just a totally different vibe. Which then I'll make a plug for this conference we have coming up in March. If people want to know about setting up a plan B in Uruguay, we're also going to have, it looks like we're going to have this expert who handles residencies in Argentina who will also be here. Not 100% confirmed yet, but 90%. He'll be here too. If nothing else, we'll have information on residency and opportunities in Argentina as well while people are here. So if you want to know more about that, go to crisisinvesting.com. It's called the Plan B Uruguay Conference.
Yeah, I really think it's a good idea to do it and do it. And in fact, probably it's an even better idea to get residencies and citizenships in both countries because anything can happen anywhere.
Yeah, and also make it easy for people if you're interested in setting up a foreign bank account. Where that can happen while you're here. So the idea is that you learn a lot and you can get things done while you're here. That's the goal.
Yeah, and that last is important because it is, I don't know how many people that are watching this have tried, if they're Americans, but it is extremely hard for an American to set up a foreign bank or brokerage account anywhere in the world not because there's anything illegal about it from the US point of view, but because nobody wants American business. It is more trouble than it's worth with all the regulations you expose yourself to if you have a US client. So Uruguay can solve that problem.
Yep, exactly. Okay, just two more items I wanted to talk about. One is that I don't know if you saw that there are a total of 13,000 FBI agents and 5,000 of them were were worked on the J6 case.
That's, once again, I'm amazed, I'm flummoxed, and I'm disgusted. I mean, here we had just some average middle-aged, middle Americans that walk into the Capitol. I mean, there are a few bad actors, probably most of them FBI plants, quite frankly. And 40% of the FBI is then used against average Americans for a non-crime. This is criminally insane again.
It's shocking. Yeah, I couldn't believe that number. So they've got the list now. Who knows what they're going to do with those guys, honestly. So I'm sure that a lot of FBI agents also very concerned about their future and prepared to fight back if they can.
Yeah, I'm sure not all of those FBI agents were bad apples. They were just doing what they're told. But that's one of the problems with working for an organization like the FBI. You got to do what you're told, or you're going to have a black mark against you and probably even get fired. It's
Yeah, it's like the guy just running the trains. I mean, you got to have, where does your conscience come in with stuff and your own personal standards on things?
yeah, and to think, I think I mentioned this in the past. One time when I was selling insurance to the dean of George Washington University, and he was a personable guy, and we got along very well. And he allowed to me that, listen, you're the kind of guy the FBI would want. I can set up an appointment for you with you to meet. See, he was, and I passed on that. But in a way, I think, it might have been fun to have gone through their basic course and worked for them for 6 months just to have done it. But it's turned into a horrible organization. It started out as a horrible organization. I mean, sure, Al Capone was not a good guy. What was Al Capone doing? Well, bad things, but basically all the money came from providing beer and liquor to Americans that like to drink beer and alcohol. I mean, so you shouldn't be enforcing what should I call it? It's a victimless crime.
Exactly. Yep. All right. One last thing. We talked about this situation with gold last week, but it seems to be escalating, and that there's a huge amount of gold that's being, trades, the futures trade on the COMEX, and normally it's just paper trading essentially. But apparently huge amounts of that are now people are taking possession of it. Like there's a real race to get physical gold, and not among retail. Retail has no interest in gold still. This is from some heavy hitters if they're taking possession of so much. Apparently, in the past 2 months alone, 500 tons of gold have been delivered to the COMEX vaults because to meet these obligations to fulfill. What do you think is going on with this?
Well, the whole point of gold is that it's the only financial asset that's not simultaneously somebody else's liability. So when the financial system becomes unstable and sketchy, you want the gold in your own possession. You don't want to have to trust some other entity, some bank that may be bankrupt and you may not get it. So that's one thing that's going on. But, I've got to mention that over the last 20 years, something strange has occurred in the way people enumerate the amount of gold. It's all tons. And this makes everybody does it, but it makes no sense at all. Gold is not mined in tons. It's not used in tons.
Not priced in tons.
Not priced in tons. And most people get confused whether they're metric tons or English short tons. So they don't even know how much it is. And nobody knows off the top of their head. Well, I think it's 31,000 troy ounces are in a metric ton of gold, but nobody knows how many ounces are in a ton, even though it's priced in ounces. So where did this meme arise from? I think it arose to make gold more irrelevant, more understandable, more esoteric, more
Abstract.
meaningless. Hmm?
Yeah. Abstract.
Abstract. Yes, exactly. And everybody does it. And so whenever anybody uses tons, even though that's the way it's reported by whatever, uh, I have to bring this. I have to bring this up because I think it's important.
It's 40,000 good delivery bars. Now those are the 400-ounce bars, right?
Well, yeah, you have 400-ounce bars, but I thought those were good delivery between governments. 100-ounce bars are what's traded on the COMEX, but they're
Hmm.
also 1 kilo bars. So you got those three size bars, basically.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, but, the only thing I'm interested in is 1 ounce gold coins, or actually more and more today, quarter-ounce gold coins, because they look like small change, although small change is disappearing right before our very eyes. So maybe that's not going to work anymore either.
Yeah. Well, so basically people they want possession of the gold because they would, if you're worried about a financial problem or you're worried about some musical chairs thing being conducted, you want to make sure that you own gold, you want to make sure that you've got the gold in your own possession that you control. And I think that it almost is this a foreshadowing of a market event or of a collateral problem or a credit problem of some kind? The fact that obviously some well-moneyed people, very well deep-pocketed people are basically taking possession of gold like this. Does that imply we should be more concerned about the markets right now?
I think it does, because it seems to me the markets are grossly overpriced by every standard parameter. Price to earnings ratio, price to book value ratio, price to dividends ratio, the amount of debt that underlies all these corporations, which if things turn down, some people are not going to be able to pay. The fact that most of the banks are bankrupt because they're sitting on lots of bonds, which have fallen usually in value. Uh, if the ones that were buying bonds when they were 1.5% and 2%, interest rates go up to 4.5% and 5%. The current value on a bond with 20 or 30 years to go drops 30 or 40%. That's a big hit.
Giant hole in Bank of America's balance sheet as one example.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I can't see how it can go away, quite frankly, because predicting interest rates there's lots of reasons why it's very hard to do. But as they print more money, uh, prices are going to go up. So-called inflation goes up, and interest rates are going up too. So people that own bonds are owning hot potatoes.
It's almost like the demand for this much gold is what you'd want to do in advance of a great taking, that's for sure. Right? I mean,
I
well,
think it is. I think it is, and I'm glad that I own lots of gold, and I hope everybody listening to this does too. And if you don't own lots of gold, take advantage of the fact that, as you said, the premiums on gold coins are down to historic lows, which is counterintuitive, but it's an excellent time to buy gold coins for just that reason.
yep, I agree. And if you we have there's a gold storage place, I'll make another plug for SWP Cayman. I have gold there in storage. It's we trust the people and the company that has it. But I have gold that is there now, and it's an easy way to buy it if you want to have it outside of the U.S. It's a good way to have money outside of the U.S. and real money and gold outside of the U.S. And if you tell them that it came from Doug and I, then we get a little kickback. It's tiny, but we do get something. But either way, they're good, and there are others out there that you can use. But if you don't have any gold, I would definitely get some. Smart
Yeah,
money is getting.
yeah.
Okay.
Act now and beat the last minute rush.
Yeah. Well, it's a 20 almost it's almost a 2,900 an ounce now. I mean, it's getting wild.
And it's not artificially suppressed, which people were saying for years. It's reasonably priced relative to clothes or meals or houses or cars. I mean, it's on a historical basis, it's about where it should, quote unquote, be. But I think it's going higher because the chaos in the world is going to get greater, and they're going to keep printing up money. So it's reasonably priced, good reason to buy it, and it's almost certainly going higher at this point.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we'll leave it there for today, Doug. We'll be back on Friday with questions from members of the file. So if you have questions, you need to be a subscriber to Crisis Investing. You get access to file, ask your questions there, and we'll do that on Friday.
I'll be here.
All right. Me too. Thanks, Doug. Bye-bye.